Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last day of Peralta Online Equity Conference. Today, we are going to start with a wonderful session. Um, our presenters are Dale Ireland, Sarah Nielsen, Emmett Rodriguez, and Nandini Jhaveri, and they will be talking about neurodiversity, equity, and AI in higher education. And we are really excited to listen to them. But before I pass the microphone to them, a quick reminder of housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, so if you don't want to be seen in the recording, please turn off your webcam throughout the session. And please keep your microphones muted unless you are invited to speak. And we're going to share your questions with the presenters at the end of the session. And the closed caption feature is enabled, so you can activate it by clicking on the show captions or CC Live transcript button in the bottom toolbar. If not visible, click more to find it. So, having said that, I am excited to pass the microphone to Dale, Sarah, Emmett, and Nandini.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity to come together. The last 2 days have been amazing. I think we'll do a moment of housekeeping as well. I'm Dale Ireland, and I will introduce myself briefly again and give you a description of who I am. And my co-presenters will do the same. And then I will move into an overview of how we hope to spend our time together. And good morning, or whatever time of day it might be for those of you accessing this during a recording. I am a white person wearing brown glasses. My hair is pulled back, and I'm wearing a maroon top. And I will toss it over to Emmett.
Hello, everyone. I am Emmett Rodriguez. I am a white male wearing glasses and a green top. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I'll be passing it to Nandini.
Hi, I hope everyone is doing well. I am a brown woman wearing brown glasses. My hair is down, and you can't really see it, but I'm wearing like a striped sweater. And I'll pass it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Nandini, and thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Sarah. I'm a white woman. I'm wearing brown glasses. I have short blonde hair, and I'm wearing a purple jacket, a light purple jacket. And I will hand things back to Dale.
Thank you so much. And I also want to share my pronouns, they, she. I think, Emmett, you generously offered to run the slides for us. And would someone be willing to copy and paste in chat for everyone the link to the slides, and those of you who will be accessing this gathering later, the slides will be available then. All right, so our session is titled Who Gets to Sound Human? Neurodiversity, Equity, and AI in Higher Education. And the presentation is brought to you by 2 students and 2 faculty members at Cal State East Bay. Next slide, please. During our time together, we'll spend a little time settling in, and then we'll spend some time exploring the background of neurodivergence and writing, the relationship there. And we'll collaborate and explore a case study together. And finally, we'll hopefully take away modeling what we value. Next slide, please. And I will now turn it over to Sarah.
I'm reading the land acknowledgement today. We come together in this virtual space, joining today from locations around the world or accessing this recording at a future time from locations near and far. The 4 of us come to you from Cal State University, East Bay, Hayward's campus. We acknowledge and honor the Ohlone and Chochenyo tribes and all of the original indigenous peoples of the land upon which California State University East Bay stands. The California State University East Bay Muwekma Ohlone Tribe Land Acknowledgement Resolution for the Hayward campus is available here at the link on the slide. We've also included a link to a website called Whose Land Are You On, in case you would like to further explore the land that you are occupying. So thank you, Dale, and I will pass it back to you.
Thank you. I'd like to stay with this slide for a moment if I could. Emmett, that was unfair of me. Sarah, I apologize for the missing article in front of California. Well done. Thank you very much. And I'd like to take a moment just to describe the decorative image that we have on this slide, and I'll read the image description. We have a flowing wave-like form with shades of green, teal, and purple, and they create this abstract sense of gentle movement and, I think, depth. And so that is the description of our image. Emmett, may we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. I'm going to read our access invocation. So we're going to begin by making room for our authentic selves. Part of creating a welcoming space means making room for who we are. So please make yourself comfortable during this conversation. Feel free to have your camera off or on. Feel free to move about, to rest in whatever way is comfortable, to leave and come back. Please move when you need to. Doodle, knit, scroll, stand, stim, stretch, rock, roll, move in ways that work for you. Leave Zoom and come back. If we use any images, we will be describing them. Access is something that we create together, so please let us know if at any time through our gathering today, and that means interrupting us, we can do anything to enhance access. Please feel free to use the Zoom chats function. I think we're going to try and pay attention to that as well. And I think that is it. I will read once again, the image description. We have a larger version of the same image. Again, we have those flowing waves and they're shades of teal, purple, and green, and they have light at the edges of them, or appears to have light. And again, it has this abstract sense of gentle movement and depth, maybe a theme for today. I don't know. Maybe have the next slide, please. We're going to begin today talking about AI bias against neurodivergence. And then from that, we will move to classrooms and thinking about how that might shape discourse, specifically in assignments, work that students generate as well. So let's begin with AI systematically associates neurodivergence with negative concepts. And so I will be sharing a slide in a little while I think it's actually in our sources at the end, from an article, Prevalence of Bias Against Neurodivergence Related Terms in Artificial Intelligence Language Models. And so that will be available to you as well. And the authors of the article found that language models consistently link terms related to autism, ADHD, and other conditions with words such as bad, dangerous, or disease. So this reveals a patterned negativity rather than a neutral representation. Emmett, could we have the next slide? Thank you. These biases are not random, and they reflect how AI learns and amplifies cultural stigma. So because the models are trained on large bodies of human language, something we know, all of us here, they absorb and reproduce existing social attitudes. As a result, AI encodes neurodivergence through a deficit-oriented frame rather than a variation. Emmett, may we move to the next slide? Thank you. AI treats neurodivergent identity itself as a negative signal and not just specific traits. The bias appears at the level of identity labels, such as autism. I also want to disclose here I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD and I am autistic. Simply naming a neurodivergent condition can shift how AI evaluates a sentence or a person, which suggests a deep structural stigma embedded in its associations. May we move to the next slide, please? I'm trying not to read as quickly as I want to because I'm eager for us to have a conversation. I'll try and make sure that I'm not reading too quickly. I'd like to share this quotation from the article. Quote, finally, we introduce a sentence similarity ratio test and demonstrate that many sentences describing types of disabilities, for example, I have autism or I have epilepsy, have even stronger negative associations than control sentences such as I am a robber. So clearly, I'm dangerous. Next slide, please. And I think I want to see, I think this one, Emmett, are you taking the slide for us?
Yes, sorry, I was having some issues with my screen. So thank you, Dale, for giving some context on why we are talking about AI models how and how it can create a lot of unequal access to uh, to having successful writing or to have a sense of access into the writing process. And so I will be talking about why all this matters. Why are we discussing this? So AI models are trained on human-generated text. Again, we as educators and people who are in academia, we have that understanding. I think it's really important to just acknowledge that as the basis for we have the AI models that are creating from human-generated texts. They are from other people, from many different types of people, from people all over. And it is just almost like I would like to think of it as like a melting pot of all of these different views and different ratings mixed in together. The bias in the model is a reflection of society itself. And so in that time, in that place, or in this case, a multitude of different times and places, that is so important to just, again, acknowledge that we have. That will mean that will mean the great minds, that will mean a lot of discourse, and we need to be very careful about how that actually permeates into, in this case, the education field. And then we have a question to pose, which is how do we create linguistic access within a biased system? I think that is I think that is a very important question to hold in a time such as this, where I think in academia we are juggling a lot and really kind of being curious with what does this actually look like with a bias system that may or may not be perceived by the general public. We need to be very thoughtful and careful with how we go about this. And then also we just need to ask ourselves like how can we then adjust? If we're acknowledging all these three statements above, how do we adjust all these elements to help cultivate the student? I speak on behalf of myself, and I'll just say for myself. I'll let Nandini speak for herself as well. That at California State University East Bay, um, we are. I feel very privileged that we get to speak for ourselves as a student. That we are empowered to do so in both in our writing and just in our other academic studies. And so it is still a big conversation that we have with using AI models, using AI technology that will be asked of us in future careers, but also while we're studying, what does that actually look like? And then it's also important to kind of also think about to put ourselves in the shoes or put ourselves into empathetic mindset of someone um, who may be neurodivergent, reading this type of feedback, being graded upon, again, at speaking from the student standpoint, it can feel very tough. It can feel very tough to be um, emotionally, like you put in all this work for writing. You put yourself into the text, into whatever the assignment is. Um, and if an AI system is being used to be kind of the judging factor on your writing, that can be intimidating. That can even just be dismissing of our own true humanity, of who we are each individually known for. Um, so this is again a not just a I think truly not just a pedagogical or a administrative question. This is really who do we get to decide sounds human? Who do we get to decide is our own unique writing voice? And I will be, and I believe it is Dale who will be moving us on to our next set of points.
Great. Thank you, Emmett. So we've spent some time thinking about how large language models might be replicating bias against neurodivergent writers, and want to offer a little more specific historical context to the language that many neurodivergent students, writers have received regarding their feedback. So this is language that is maybe very familiar to neurodivergent students, that their writing is repetitive, it's disorganized, it's flat, it's rambling, it lacks voice. Um, Students have shared that they've been told that their language sounds robotic, inhuman. May we have the next slide, please? Emmett, thank you so much. So if we consider that language and we compare it to the language oftentimes used to describe generative AI written output, this is some of the language that's used. It's repetitive when AI repeats patterns, its predictable structure and phrasing. It's disorganized. This is when AI writing unexpectedly contradicts itself or loosely connects ideas. It's flat when AI writing reads as, not my language, lifeless, mechanical, impersonal, and inhuman, all of which are shorthand for identifying AI writing. Rambling, when AI writing constitutes without clear progression, wrong word there, and circles rather than advancing ideas. And then lacks voice is a phrase that's used when AI writing feels off and produces an absence or a mismatch of voice. May we have the next slide, please? Okay. So how do we move from this deficit framing to maybe difference? There are different writing strategies, different ways that we move through writing. And before I share the language that is on the slide, I just want to share that it might be worth asking ourselves, what do we miss when we do not have language for repetition in writing that is not deficit-based? So repetition is legible differently depending on the framework we bring to it. I just want us to think about the different ways that repetition might be fruitful, beneficial. And then finally, when we find repetition, we might ask ourselves, is this generating or is it constraining? And so to maybe reframe how we understand repetition. And this is just one of the words that often are attached to AI output and writing of neurodivergent students. So if we move from deficit to difference, we might explore repetition as a way of holding a thought in place, other things as well, disorganized as nuanced and interconnected thinking, flat as a refusal or possibly an inability to perform expected affect. And we might query ourselves in terms of what do we expect in terms of affect, rambling as sustained attention rather than drift. If we could shift lacks voice to as meaning made through pattern, structure, or relation to language, rather than through expected performances of voice. Emmett, may we have the next slide? And I think we are turning it over to Sarah. Thank you, Emmett.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dale and Emmett. And we're going to shift now into looking at a peer review protocol that might be used in a writing intensive class for a middle draft. So a draft that is not in its final form, but that has already, that the student writer has already engaged in some development of the work to get to this middle draft. So um, we're going to do some case studies looking at some pairs of prompts here in the peer review protocol. But before we do that, I wanted to just give us about 2 to 3 minutes to read through the case study peer review for a middle draft questions, and just take some time to read these on your own, and we'll talk briefly about overall impressions of the peer review protocol. And Dale, is there anything else that you'd like to add about the peer review before folks read it on their own?
Thank you, Sarah. This is a combination of different documents, things that are used in peer review, things that are not necessarily used in peer review. And this peer review originally is for an assignment where students are writing a dialogue and putting ideas from different authors into conversation. And we've modified this so that it's an essay for our case study. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional background, Dale. So now, yes, let's take about 2 to 3 minutes and read through the case study material here, the peer review protocol, the questions. All right, everyone. I hope that you had enough time to at least get an overall sense of the questions on the peer review protocol. And I just wanted to ask if people would be willing to share some initial impressions, things that you found that you liked about the protocol, or things that maybe you had questions or concerns about. And if you're comfortable, it would be great to have you speak into the space, or put a comment in the chat. I see. Thank you. There's a comment in the chat. I like the specificity of the questions. Okay. Yes, thank you for that comment. Other general impressions. Let's say I like how the questions prompt towards metacognitive thinking. Okay, so getting students to reflect on the writers at a meta level and on the text that they're engaging with. Yes, absolutely. Their reactions as a reader. Wonderful. Just to save time, I think I will move us forward into the next part of this. Just wanted to also mention I like and this is really mirroring I think some of the comments that have already been made. I appreciate the way this protocol encourages the stances as interested reader. Some of those early questions like what phrases, sentences, ideas strike you as memorable? Um, and what do you want to hear more about as a reader? So I think that's one thing I really like about the protocol, and also this idea that someone mentioned that we go from some broad questions towards more narrow questions that get students to dig into and think about the text that they are giving feedback on. You may have noticed in terms of some things about the protocol that might be revised, some deficit language, and maybe there are some questions that could be combined, and we'll talk about those as we walk through some pairs. And I see in the chat. Um, Let's see. If my soft son questions 6, he would say that he hates the types of questions that you ask, like, why do you think the author did so and so? And specifically the new insights. All right. So yes, a good point that some peer reviewers may find those kinds of questions very challenging and difficult in various ways. Thank you all for sharing. So now I'd like to, Emmett, if you could advance the slide, talk a little bit about our first case study, or the part 1 of our case study, and look at these 2 questions from the protocol. And are there moments where the writing fell flat or where the energy dropped? Offer suggestions for where a stronger or more distinct voice might deepen the reader's engagement. And question 7, does the writing feel like it has a human voice, such as a perspective that is distinctly your classmates, or does it feel like a summary? And so here again, if people are comfortable, if you have some reactions to these 2 particular parts, question sets in the peer review, please unmute and speak, or put comments into the chat. Anything you notice about the language or the kind of response that the questions are asking the peer reviewer to develop. And I also invite, my the other people on the panel today to jump in here as well. I wanted to say just, I think, a few things. And again, to move us along, I know we don't have a lot more time, but in number 3, that use of the word flat, in 7, that use of the word human voice, perspective that is distinctly your classmates. These, seem to resonate with some of that deficit language, or are that deficit language represented here, with, I think, not with bad intentions, but these are words, I think, that our neurodivergent students and other students may feel as a kind of disrespect or an insult or a devaluing of their process as they do something very complex in sharing their ideas with a larger audience. I also think for question 7, that developing an academic voice is hard for all of our students. Figuring out how to bring in yourself to this world that is still new, and you're figuring out how to navigate it. And so I'm wondering, are there ways that sort of the good intentions behind these questions might be phrased in more descriptive ways? How would you summarize or share the writer's controlling idea, main idea, or perspective, in your own words? And I see there are some suggestions in the chat too. Um, yeah, love the phrase, to what extent does feel like a unique voice is emerging. Yeah, thank you for that observation. And I think just in being cognizant of time, I want to pass things on to Emmett to look at a couple of other examples, although I see Dale unmuted. So Dale, please go ahead.
I'm so sorry to do this.
No.
I did, Sarah. Sarah, I want to thank you for inviting us to think about an intersectional frame, because it is not just neurodivergent students who often have their writing framed within, this human voice. What is it to be human? And so I want to just make a big nod to other places where the language that people bring into academia is relegated as less than, which human voice can be a big umbrella term for. So thank you for that. I'm thinking AAVE and other ways that we communicate. So thank you for reminding us that we also want to think about this with an intersectional frame.
Thank you, Dale. And Emmett is going to do our case study part 2, so I'll pass things over to him now.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So moving us into 2 more examples of the type of language, and even maybe possibly a shift in how we can start to grapple with the type of assignments, the type of wording, and even just the type of mindset that we come into a peer review process. So first, I'll read our first example. What is almost said that you would add, or what is missing for you that you would add? Where does the draft ramble in places as if jumping between ideas without without a clear through line? Identify where you lost the thread and what might anchor it. We also have, what are the 2 keywords your classmate is explaining, and what main point does your classmate want you, the reader, to understand regarding these keywords? If the organization felt disorganized at any point, where did you find yourself rereading to locate their argument? So I do want to also just highlight that I am a writing tutor on campus here at Cal State East Bay. And so um, these 2 questions are actually a lot of the times that I tend to ask my own self in people's writing when I am on shift, or when I'm working one-on-one with a fellow student of mine. And and yet I can still see that there are, and even in my own sessions, sometimes I can fall into some of these trappings where it's a natural element of feeling like, is this rambling again in the first quote or in the first set of questions, or is it disorganized? And I think just from my own perspective, or from the perspective of a writing tutor, again, we are set in a middle draft, and there's still a lot of time to change things, to really shift the organization to a level that the writer feels confident that they want their argument presented, and that still keeps their writing voice. And as Sarah mentioned, I writing voice is hard to navigate. I think anyone who is a writer can say that. And so it's really important I think just acknowledge that this is still a process, that writing is a process. It's not a product. It is not a, there's never, we can always chip away. We can always refine and rethink and that's the beauty of writing. And so I think that is a big question. With all that said, I think it's also important to again acknowledge, I think as Dale and Sarah has said, that it's not just neurodivergent students that might be affected or that might see some issues with this wording. Um, there are also times where, as much as I can see the wording and the idea of where the assignment wants us to like really focus on, it can feel like I'm dictating where is this disorganized, so or where is it rambling. Everyone has a little bit of a distinct style. I when we were chatting about these questions in a past meeting, I had a kind of a gut reaction to the ramble question because I had also noticed in my own writing that I tend to ramble. But sometimes that is distinctly my own piece of writing, and there's still a coherent or there still is a sense of a through line. That's just a natural, but it's a natural way for me. So I think allowing individuality, even within academic work, to a certain extent, is needed. And I think it's important to still acknowledge that we are human, that we all have our unique perspectives, and we can still have academic standards and have an academic like guideline, but we can still acknowledge that we each bring our own unique perspective and our own unique sense of how to communicate to the to it. So within this, I'm going to now hand it over to Nandini, who will be talking about our next set of the case study.
All right. Thank you, Emmett. So, the last two questions that we want you to focus on before we kind of shift things over is what phrases, sentences, or ideas that strike you or seem memorable. Be sure to explain why they are memorable. If any parts felt repetitive or circled back without developing further, note those as well and explain what you noticed. And then the second part, it's not the second part of the first part, but the second part in this slide is how does your classmate demonstrate how the author's arguments, when considered together, reveal new insights not explicitly addressed by either authors slash character alone. So if we look at the first part itself, one word that the panel kind of discussed as we were preparing this, that was part of like the deficit language, is repetitive, because oftentimes repetitive in writing, if ideas or words kind of keep appearing, it has a negative connotation in a lot of areas in academic writing. Um, if I go based off of my personal experience, I really love to write. I have been writing for a long time, but also I have OCD and I have anxiety. So when I'm writing, I often feel as though um, I'm really focused a part of the work on kind of repeat the prompt, or this is how I'm kind of, is actually a tool of emphasis. Also, for me, repetition is a tool for emphasis. And then if we go to the second part, which is how does your classmate demonstrate the author's arguments, that part, that actually is an explanation of kind of getting us to think about how did the writer actually do synthesis. So the prompt itself doesn't really ask that, like, how did your classmate do synthesis? But that's getting the peer reviewer to be like, like how did your classmate reveal new insights? And so that is kind of shifting the focus away from like this like linear or like set structure of writing that, this is how it should be. These are the rules. And, all writers fall into that category. And it kind of shifts us to this idea of like, how did we reveal new insights, or how did we kind of take what authors said, but then apply our human aspect? Because after all, what is writing if not parts of ourselves as well? Like as Emmett said, like writing is a process, and process should include ourselves as well. We should leave a footprint. So with that, I will shift it back to Dale, I believe.
Nandini, thank you so much. I have a final slide that I would invite anyone to read as our takeaways. And then I'm hoping that we can have some time to have even more informal chat. I would love to revisit some of the comments that we have in the chat. Martha has offered us a comment about different ways, certain approaches that have been suggested in the chat might benefit many different students. And we've had conversations or suggestion about how to revise the peer review using the grading rubric. And I'd really love to move into those conversations. Before we do that, would anyone, I don't know, I'd love to hear another voice if anyone who is joining the session, anyone want to read the final slide, or we are happy to do it as well. Just give a moment in case someone wants to go ahead and read. All right, in the interest of time, because I really want that conversation, we were thinking that some of the things that we could carry forward are language carries history, and that assignment design is an equity concern, which I think is also being discussed in some important ways in the chat regarding rubrics. And faculty who use equitable and inclusive language teach their students to do the same. So we are modeling that as well in the language that we choose. With our slide deck, there are a couple of resources. I think the article that we've mentioned, and then there is a link to a specific ways of working with language when you are creating assignments. And it comes from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. And they have a guide they put together titled One Idea Per Line, a guide to making easy read resources. And so that is available in the slide deck. And we might be able to put some links in the chat. And I believe we've got about 1 minute, I apologize, for our final wrap up. Thank you for adding the slides there. Any last conversations about the rubric, suggestion for revising the questions so that it better supports students when they're giving feedback and it aligns with the objectives of the assignment, or how such work might benefit students? Martha was talking about benefit students using multiple languages beyond English, as well as neurodivergent students, with some of the suggestions regarding the rubrics and revision. And I think that we are very close to time. Okay, great. Thank you all very much for thinking with us. And I will try and gather some of the comments that we have in the chat and add them to the deck. I will, unless people reach out and ask that their names be included, I will try and provide them in a summative fashion so that those who are joining later have access to that. Thank you so much.
Dale, Emmett, Nandini, and Sarah, thank you so much for this important and timely session. And thank you for the audience as well, because of your engagement in the chat. So we really appreciate this. This session actually reminded us that equitable AI policies are not just about detecting use, but about designing practices that support diverse ways of communicating, and learning. So thank you so much. And everyone, let me first of all stop the recording.